the meeting to order. This is the Village of Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting for Thursday, March 6, 2014. The time is 7 p.m. And I would ask the clerk to please call the roll. Here.
Trustee Sussman. Here. Trustee Hamilton.
Here.
Trustee Powell.
Here.
Trustee Valerie.
Here.
Trustee Foley.
Here.
Village Manager Solera.
Here.
Village Attorney Molina.
Here.
Village Attorney Mars.
Here.
Also present, Village Clerk Haley. Not with us this evening is Trustee Collins.
Thank you very much. We have a quorum. If you'll please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you to those in attendance and for those watching from home. If you're here with us tonight and you'd ever like to make a comment, just feel free. You can just come up to the podium, ask to be recognized by the president, so you can just give us your name and your address so that the people at home can hear what you have to say. You're welcome to speak at the start of the meeting during public comment or at any time during the meeting as a particular agenda item comes forward. Having said that, is there anyone who would like to address the board? Hearing none, we'll move on to the reports of village officers. First up is the village president's report. I have a motion to appoint Jason Johns to the West Suburban Mass Transit District to fill a vacancy. The West Suburban Mass Transit District is a grant-generating arm of BNSF Railway, and Mr. Johns is an attorney of some accomplishment and has agreed to represent the village on our behalf. So I would ask for a motion and a second.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Foley.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ballerine. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Hamilton.
Aye.
Trustee Powell.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up is a request by United Cerebral Palsy Seguin for a letter of support. UCP Seguin is asking for a community development block grant from the Cook County Department of Planning and Development to renovate a number of their group homes in the Cook County area, one of which is here in our community and serves 3 young adults. And so they have asked for a letter of support from the village with regard to their block grant application. So without any objection, we will prepare that letter. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. Thank you very much. I also wanted to mention that last week on February 28th, we did have a special meeting of the village board at which the improvements for the First Avenue intersection were discussed fairly exhaustively. We had Teresa Pelletier from the IDOT, who was the project manager, who was here, and she went through all the different enhancements that are being done and answered questions and took comments from the residents. And if you would like to see that, actually our cable commission had it up the next day. I was really proud to see. So you can go to www.riversidetv.us and you can see that meeting in its entirety. And if you're interested in what's going on over at First Avenue, I encourage you to go take a look. And the last thing I have is this Sunday on March 9th from 2 to 4 at the West Well House, which is 10 Pine Avenue. The Riverside History Museum is having a new exhibit called Images of Riverside. And the exhibit is in honor of Judith Cezak, the past chair of the Historical Commission, who passed away, unfortunately, last year. So I encourage everyone to come out and honor her memory and also see a beautiful exhibit at the West Well House. And that is all I have for this evening. Mr. Manager?
Okay, I just have 2 items. The first is to inform the board that Crisis, a new, I think it's NBC show, wrapped up its shooting at the Scout Cabin actually yesterday. They're breaking down today and tomorrow. The whole street was closed for the week that allowed them to film a scene of the upcoming episode. I think it airs this Sunday, that is being shot mostly here in Chicago. So the scene involved some gunplay. So if you're looking when they do air that, you'll be able to see some backdrops of Riverside. The other item is a follow-up to the board's bond question discussion. I just wanted to inform the board that staff has prepared some information, and we are continuing to gather some additional data that we will then bring back to the board at a later date following receipt of our street sufficiency study and sidewalk study, which we hope to have done in the next month or so here. Hopefully the weather will cooperate, the snow will melt, and we'll be able to wrap those up and then bring our items back to the board for further discussion. And that is all I have.
Questions about any of that? Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that any trustee would like to have removed for further discussion? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion and second for approval.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Sussman, second by Ms. Hamilton. Please call the roll.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Hamilton.
Aye.
Trustee Pollock.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up is reports of departments and commissions, and we're honored to have members of the Landscape Advisory Commission here tonight to begin an initial report on an exhaustive study that they have been doing with regard to the landscape in the village. And they are going to be talking tonight. It's part one of 5 parts, and tonight is street triangles. And Ms. Mahoney?
So thank you all for having us. I hope you can hear me without any mic or anything. I've got one block here, so I'm not sure I can hear your questions.
Doesn't she need to do stuff?
Gentlemen,
Can I
Do you want me to
interject?
help you? I'll press.
Because we need you to use the mic so folks at home can hear, and Peter can handle the
I will be your IT.
he'll be your remote control.
You let me know when you want that.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, next. So to review kind of the purpose of this master plan, and I believe you all should have received earlier the actual detailed report. This is more a summary of that report and to give you the opportunity for questions and so forth. But it is per the ordinance that the Landscape Advisory Commission prepare this master plan. To my knowledge, this is the first time that such a plan has been prepared by the commission. We have a couple of previous plans that were done, oh gosh, over the past 20 years or so that were commissioned to outside personnel to prepare. The idea is that the Landscape Advisory Commission prepares this as an evergreen document to provide guidance about the planting and the usage of the public areas in Riverside. So this is, as per the ordinance, the principles, and in particular to infuse the planting plan with the theories and concepts of Olmsted. Other uses are that we work very closely with the Public Works Department. Mike Collins and Ed Bailey are part of every Landscape Advisory Commission, so they tell us a lot, about what's actually going on the ground, and we are there as a sounding board for them in terms of prioritizing and estimating resources based off of this plan. We hope that it will be an educational tool for residents to describe, what the situation is of the different public areas, what might be done, and why things might be done for the public areas. And then, as I mentioned, it is the plan, really, that should be as up-to-date as possible that supports our designation as a National Historic Landmark Village. So just briefly, who are some of the commissioners? I think we had a lot of talent behind this report. We continue to get a lot of good talent on the commission. Mary Capistrano is a professional playground and park designer. So as we move into one of the next sections of the report, which will be looking at the public parks, her experience is really invaluable. And of course, we're working with the Parks and Rec group on that. Our charter is just to look at the landscape elements in the public parks. Bob Finn is here tonight, and Bob really talks the talk. I mean, you will see him at every work day planting and so forth, so he knows all of our, well, I might talk in theory, he talks in dirt under the fingernails about what's going on. Sue Joseph was formerly on the commission. She was a manager for New Hampshire Farms that is a major grower that supplies a lot of the garden centers in the Midwest. She's a plantswoman beyond compare. Diana Lamantia is the chair of our commission. Both she and Gail Sellers are architects, and they bring a nice overall perspective of how to view a triangle from an aesthetic and so forth standpoint. As for myself, I'm kind of the process maven for this. I have 20-some years with Accenture, so I kind of cracked the whip on it, and then my second career is in horticultural history, and I've written quite a few books on that. Melinda Pruitt-Jones just recently resigned from the commission due to work activities. She was the chair for Chicago Wilderness and has invaluable insights and networking with a number of conservation and environmental groups throughout the Chicago area. Eric was the chair of the commission when we started this. Terry, like Bob, is really on the ground. She really jump-started a lot of the planting in the business district a couple years ago. Mark Stanley is no longer on the commission. He is a landscape architect. And then we have two new commissioners who just recently joined us who will be helping out. And then, as I mentioned, Ed and Mike have helped us throughout the whole process. So the scope and timeline. This particular report is covering just the triangles. The other elements we will be presenting in later reports. The remaining elements that we have in scope are the commons, Scottswood and Long Common. And believe me, we had to struggle a little bit with definitions like, are the commons just really overgrown triangles? Are they parks because there are parks within them and so forth? So it's a little bit a judgment call as to what something is, but we try to define it by its function or its purpose and then see how the landscape contributes to that. The different parks, the natural areas primarily adjoining the Des Plaines River, and then the CBD. The CBD is excluded now from the ordinance for our purview. However, we've kind of got it a little bit underway, so for what it's worth, we'll give you our thoughts that we've done so far. Now, the timeline might look a little depressing down there because this is supposed to be a 3 to 5 year plan. And it's going to take us 5 years to get this done. It's a little misleading. We started at the very end of 2011, and 2011 and 2012 were mostly, pardon me, entailed developing the process itself, running through it a couple of times, and then starting on the triangles. We thought it was a good idea to start on the triangles because they were manageable, they were small, everybody knew what they were, and that was a great idea. And then we realized, well, there's 46 of them, and so that might not have been such a great idea, but we cut our teeth on that and finished that up in 2013. This year, we have completed the commons, actually. We've got the parks underway, and we hope to complete the natural areas. So it's our hope that by about this time next year, we would have the other parts of the report ready for you to review. And then presumably, with this experience under the belt, future commissions and folks remaining on the commission would be able to streamline the process. So I think you've seen this before, and I'll just briefly go through it so you get a sense of what guided our ideas and basically how we came to our conclusions. So the first thing we needed to do was determine what are we shooting for? What is the ideal triangle? If we're going to go out and try to assess how the current triangles are, we need to have a benchmark for what it should be. So to develop those guidelines, we use not only Riverside existing ordinances, Olmsted writings, the previous reports that were prepared by, pardon me, the commissioned reports that I mentioned by Malcolm Carnes and Scott Mahaffey and Ed Straka, as well as a lot of input from other people. We started to assess each of the actual triangles, and in doing that, we sent out 2 commissioners each so that we had a balanced view of it, and started to document on each triangle. And I think in the report that you had, there's a worksheet that showed how we evaluated each triangle along a number of different criteria. We mapped this. We were able to use some of the GIS data that the village uses so that we knew not only what trees and shrubs were there per the inventory that was done, I think, back in 2008, but also we were able to then map onto a GIS layer what we saw the areas to work on were. We started to take a look at some of the best practices here. Some of Melinda's work with Chicago Wilderness was extremely helpful. The National Association of Olmsted Parks we looked at, and a number of other best practices. And then we started to document and assess all of the triangles and put this into the final report. So what is the ideal triangle? Well, there should be a balance, a good balance of canopy and understory plantings. And, or if you have a very, very small triangle, there were some triangles that only had like 2 trees in them, a healthy canopy and lawn. So the idea is to be able to graduate from a very tall canopy tree, some of the major oaks and so forth, down to an understory tree, down to the shrub layer, and then down to the ground cover layer or the lawn, so that you don't have just a bunch of trees sticking up coming out of nowhere. The goal would be to have a naturalistic planting or a grouping or masses of native plants with no specimen plants drawing attention. So you wouldn't want to see, unlike you might have in your own backyard where you want to draw attention, for example, to a beautiful magnolia tree. This was not something that Olmsted wanted to do in the public areas. So you wouldn't want to have a tree that was just clamoring for your attention right smack dab in the middle of an open space. You would want groupings of plants done in a naturalistic as opposed to a geometric type fashion. Obviously, you want to have healthy plantings free of disease. You want to have framed views. This was something that Olmsted was very particular about for both pedestrians and drivers, so that you created a sense of mystery as you're going along. So the idea of having some openings and then some closings and then again some openings and so forth, both for drivers and for pedestrians. And then lastly, a diversity of plant material. And that is diverse not only in species but in age. So you wouldn't want to have a triangle where all the trees were just 3 inches, 3 caliper type trees. You would want to see some growing and for a long time, some new ones planted to replace the old ones, and so forth. So diversity covers not just species but also a number of other elements. And I should point out that, it's dealing with the landscape, as you know, is a very ephemeral situation, and it's something where you play catch up a little bit. For example, this is the ideal triangle. Well, unfortunately, the steward who was working with that triangle moved away, and no one has taken over that position. And in that time frame, initially it was designated an ideal triangle because it had a beautiful undercover of native wildflowers. It had May-apples and it had Solomon seal and so forth. And once the steward moved away, that was overrun by weeds and so forth, and so that had to be mowed down. And so that was only in a matter of, one season, really, that one thing can go from being very good to now I'd drop it down to like a medium level triangle. So I know you can't read the map here, but it was in your packet. Pardon me. And so this is the overall state of the triangles. And the state of the triangles is good. And I know you're sitting here thinking, gosh, it's been 2 years, and she's going to come back and say, everything's good. Well, I think that's good, because the fact of the matter is, we can always improve. We'd really like to move some of those triangles up to the excellent category, and that's what we'll be, hopefully everybody will be trying to do. At the same time, the 15 triangles that garnered an overall rating of poor, pardon me, are ones primarily, as you can see in the second bullet point, had issues of disease, potential disease, because of the emerald ash borer and some other considerations. I guess maybe the one main aesthetic, if you will, or consideration was that there wasn't a lot of layering in some of the larger triangles that could certainly support that. And that's what I was talking about, having the graduated levels of planting from a canopy tree down to ground cover. So, two other observations that we had were that which may seem obvious, but the triangles who had active stewards fared better on a number of criteria. For example, invasive removal in particular. And you can tell, when you go into a triangle, you can tell if there's an active steward or not. And Bob Finn handles the Adopt a Landscape program, and all you do is you go back and you check the worksheet. Yep, this has got a steward on it. So it's very, very obvious where there's some volunteer participation. And overall, extremely good use of native plants. It's really like a little mini arboretum that we have here, and it's really astounding the diversity of plantings that we have. So recommendations just for this triangle report. And again, when we finish the other elements of the report, we hope to present consolidated recommendations that might include some estimated of resources and some priorities, but we don't feel we can do this on a silo basis with each individual report. But on a pilot basis, we want to try to use ground covers in lieu of mulch to create a more naturalistic design. Now, I know that this has kind of gone back and forth, and we talked to Mike Collins and Ed about it, and there's different points of view. Does ground cover keep the weeds down better than mulch? Is mulch easier to maintain for the public works crews and so forth? From an aesthetic standpoint, the issue with mulch is that particularly when the mulch is just put down for the couple of months after it's just put down, and it's put down in those very geometric designs, a big circle of mulch under. When you look at, for example, Guthrie Park, right after the mulch has been put down, it looks just what Olmsted would not have appreciated, because you have these very geometric cutouts, if you will, into the lawn. If you had instead ground cover, that would meld a lot more easily to the eye than the mulch would. So we suggested that we just try some ground covers, and Mike is amenable to that, to see, is there a ground cover that would work, that's doesn't require as much maintenance, that looks good season round, and so forth. Replant with understory where appropriate. This means when we have to take out a large canopy tree due to disease or whatever, and we'll have the situation a lot with the ash trees, The problem is, where a lot of the triangles fell down because they didn't have this layered effect, you can't really stuff an understory tree under an existing canopy tree because of the root system, the existing root system. But if you're taking down a canopy tree and the intent is to replant with another canopy tree, at the same time, if it's appropriate, we're suggesting plant with understory at the same time. Develop a prioritized list of planting areas, and this would be to target some of the areas, which have been designated as poor, in conjunction with Mike's usual triggering method for when he goes out and plants things, which is largely driven by safety issues and disease-type issues. So we want to kind of piggyback on that. Continue to monitor the species' adaptability to climate change. There have been a number of reports recently from U.S. Forestry and Chicago Botanic Garden and the Arboretum about how some of the trees, even the native ones that we like, are likely not to be as adaptable if the climate continues to change as it is. So we've developed a list of all the recommended trees that we have right now, balanced against the inventory of trees that we have right now, balanced against the trees that are being cited as suspect, and we're working with the Morton Arboretum to try to determine which ones we really have to kind of watch out for. So there's a lot of things to balance. Mike wants to obviously keep the overall diversity of the urban forest that we have here in place, and we just need to know which trees that are usually our go-to trees we might want to not go to so much anymore. That's the same point with plant a diverse forest. We'd like to, this goes hand in hand with prioritizing the plants, to focus on signature triangles, which we're calling kind of the triangles right as you enter the village. We really want to make a good statement to people coming into the village, and there were a couple of them that rated not excellent, and we think they should. And then truly support the Adopt Our Landscape program. This is the Adopt a Bed program that Bob Finn has been running, again, because we see such a remarkable difference when a steward has ownership, if you will, of the triangle. So next steps, to discuss with you and request approval on this portion of the master landscape plan. There are some of the recommendations that we know need implementation specifics. We'll work on that. We will proceed on the next portions of the master landscape plan, and at the same time, we'll consider methods of streamlining the whole process so that it's not a whole 5-year process to create a 5-year plan. That's what I have. What questions can I answer, if I can hear them?
How many of our beds are adopted, or triangles are stewarded?
I think you said about 10%? 10% or 10 beds?
I think, I think it was about 10 beds, which I think was about 20%.
20%, okay.
And then some of them, the stewards are, and that includes the commons. Some of them, the stewards are more active than other ones. They're adopted, but the stewards may not be quite as active in maintaining.
And if somebody wants to adopt a bed, they should call the village hall, and the village can get them in touch with you?
You know, I used to have forms up in the village hall, and we get some new ones. I'll have to get those out there. I think we've got a little time with all the snow out there, but I'll get them out there. So we'll get some forms at the village hall, Kathy. Certainly anybody can contact me too.
How knowledgeable does a steward need to be, or do you provide training and?
Most stewards, have a love of nature. At least the steward we've had, and generally already have the landscape experience that we need. But we do have some guidelines. It's on, if you look under the Landscape Advisory Commission, it's on the website. We do go over some things, like the main thing we want to do is pulling out the invasives. We don't want them really going in there and planting anything. And Also, generally, the first night they go out, Mike Collins likes to lead them out there and get to know whoever it is maintaining it, and, you know, talk to them a little bit about other specifics.
Yeah, Jean.
To the
Mhm.
recommendation page or your next step page.
Yep.
Yep, no, the last page, Peter, recommend, next steps, yeah.
Mhm.
So this is what you're gonna do next, and you're actually asking something of us.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to go back to.
Yes, yes.
So, one of the reasons, okay.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to leave that page up and have us look at that again, please.
Okay. And as Bob mentioned, in terms of volunteers, it's kind of neat because having done this plan and hearing about the plan, at least one volunteer group, the Olmsted Society, has approached us, asked us for a triangle. They're working now to develop with a landscape architect a plan for it, which they will, bring to LAC, and they'll donate the funds and work with the community around that triangle to do so. So, I mean, if we can get more groups like that, that would be fantastic.
I had a follow-up question on the stewards. That was my main point of inquiry. What can the village do to encourage and reward stewards and get the word out there?
Right.
What can we do?
Well, in the report, we mentioned even things like, I don't know if there's a way that, a T-shirt or something that says volunteer, because people have gone by these poor souls, on their knees grubbing around in the dirt, and they just figure, well, what the heck? They're just part of the staff or something. They don't realize that people are giving up their weekends for this. So some sort of identifier that they're part of the crew, volunteer crew, I think would be really good. And then, some pushes maybe in eFlash, and we can certainly help develop it, or have like an orientation class if people are, unfamiliar with it. We can help run that, so a Riverside eFlash. I don't know how much you want to publish a summary of this report so people become familiar with it, what they're trying, because everybody wants to look up their triangle and see how it was assessed, And if it was assessed poor, well, here's what we can do about it. So I think there are different things, and I look to you as well for any ideas that you might have.
I really like the idea of T-shirts, because then when people drive by and they see, they can ask,
Yes.
oh, what's going on here?
Mhm.
And, the word of mouth will get around, and hopefully more people will volunteer. I'd like to see the village staff come back with something for us that we can do. Maybe, let advertise on the eFlash or on the website or whatever, reward these people.
Okay, great.
And I really like the idea of providing some orientation, because
Yeah.
I think that there are probably people out there that feel a little bit intimidated about being a steward because they don't feel that they know enough. They have an interest, but they don't feel that they know enough. And I think if there were some orientation and a little bit of hand-holding in the beginning, you might be able to get groups of neighbors to even share it and adopt the triangle that's closest to them.
We have had that, and certainly some orientation, we can do that, but, one of the stewards has done some neighborhood work days out at the triangle that he adopted, and that's been very successful.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's fine, we can do some, generally, I tell the people, let me know when you're gonna go out there, I'll try and get out there and help. And there's other volunteers that like to go out and help somebody at another triangle. So, we can do some training. I think most of it should be hands-on rather than
Right.
sitting in a classroom somewhere. I think you need to get out there and actually see what a buckthorn looks like, and
Exactly.
what garlic mustard looks like, and some of those other things.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Ms. Maloney. This is a, yes, sir.
What do we need to do to
Yeah, doing-
formally approve this? Do we need to?
Wouldn't we,
Do
we'd have to
something?
motion it up, can we do it tonight, or would we have to do it on the agenda for later? Yeah.
As a resolution?
And with regard to that, just as a technical point, what is the advantage of approving per part as opposed to waiting for the complete report?
Well, I think we can start putting some of these recommendations into place. Some of them are modular enough that you can just, go ahead and do it.
Okay.
And at the very end, if we had, numbers associated with it, resource requirements and so forth, then you would do a wrap-up.
So without objection, could we put this on our consent agenda for our next meeting for approval? So we'll put it on our consent agenda for the next meeting for
Thank you
approval
very
for
much.
this portion. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Kathy.
And I think I saw that I see. did
Diana's
Diana
back
leave?
there.
There
She's
she
right
is. Our chair extraordinaire of the LAC. Thank you for all the hard work y'all are doing. This is quite impressive. It's very helpful, very, very helpful. Since we're talking about on the ground, we'll move to ordinances and resolutions. First up this evening is a resolution authorizing the village manager to create a purchase order totaling $330,000 for tree maintenance services by D. Ryan Tree and Landscape. And as soon as our remote control is done with the computer, he'll come back and explain this to us. Sir?
The item that you have before you is a resolution for the annual purchase order for our contract with D. Ryan. This is our last year in this contract, and the amount that we are seeking the purchase order approval for was a budgeted amount, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have in regards to that.
I saw them working today. Were they down in Swan Pond?
Yeah,
Were they
they're removing the ash trees.
ash trees, the ones that got destroyed by the ice, or?
Some were destroyed by the ice, and some were at that emerald ash stage.
Oh, okay.
Do we have any competing bids, or we just look at anybody else other than D. Ryan?
No, this is a final year of the contract that was already bid out. So after this year, we'll be going back out for services.
You have a multi-year commitment, but every year you have to budget and then adopt or put the money toward it.
It might be of interest just for the folks listening at home about some of the numbers that go into this overall amount. Do you just want to go through those?
Sure.
And
Of the 300,000, 200,000 is for ash removal. So a big chunk of that will be for the removal of ash trees in the community. 75,000 is for emergency tree removal, and that typically takes place during significant storm events. And then 55,000 is for our cyclical tree trimming program that we have, where they move, the whole village is designated into 4 quadrants, and they move from quadrant to quadrant every other year.
Peter, how much do we have budgeted for planting? Not in this, but elsewhere in the budget.
In the planting,
Do you recall?
I don't.
don't we have 15 a year for
Yeah, I think, no,
It's
I
25,000 or something.
thought it was 15,000.
I can find
15 or
out.
25, yeah.
can let you know.
It was a multi-year.
We'll find out. So are there any other questions about this resolution? So I'd ask for a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Foley,
So moved, second.
second by Ms. Sussman. And the motion is to approve the resolution authorizing the village manager to create purchase orders totaling $330,000 for tree maintenance services by D. Ryan Tree and Landscape LLC. If you would please call the roll.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Thank you. Trustee Hamilton.
Aye.
Trustee Pollak.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Motion carries. Next up is a resolution to approve the Patriots Park planting plan and the expenditure of funds necessary to complete the project for an amount not to exceed $12,000. Mr. Scalera.
Well, the reason why this is before you, even though the amount is less than what would be needed for me to bring this back to you, is that in order for the village to submit a grant application to ComEd, who is partnering with Open Lands in a program that they recently launched called Green Region. We would need a resolution from the village board supporting the project at Patriots Park. The ComEd grant, ComEd has allocated $150,000 to the Green Region program and awards grants up to $10,000 for individual projects. The applications are due this coming Thursday, March 15th, and we hope to hear back relatively quickly from ComEd on whether or not we will be one of the lucky recipients of this grant. And our hope and our expectation is that it will be a $10,000 grant. It's not a matching grant, so then, in essence, the project would only cost the village $2,000. And the project involves involves 200 plantings of 200 shrubs and trees that will be consistent with the existing foliage in Patriots Park. That will greatly reduce maintenance, provide screening for residents adjacent to the park, and increase the aesthetic quality of the area. Mike Collins has played a significant role in determining the different species to be planted in the area, and we're confident that the project will be a success, and hopefully with the receipt of the grant at a low cost to the village.
Trustee Valerie, did you want to say anything about this? You are kind of the expert on Patriots Park and its group.
I'm excited to be able to redo some of the plantings out there. I know that the people that live along Parkway over there now face Costco at every night, so this will be a welcome addition. And you know, if anyone's been out there, I know Bob has been out there many, many times wrestling with the thistle and buckthorn and everything, and this should bring along quite a relief out there. So it's a wonderful addition.
Any other questions? So I'd ask for a motion to approve of the resolution authorizing the Parks and Recreation Department to proceed with the project and expenditure of funds not exceeding $12,000 and approving the planting plan.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Ballerine, second by Ms. Hamilton. Please call the roll.
Trustee Sussman.
Aye.
Trustee Hamilton.
Aye.
Trustee Pollak.
Aye.
Trustee Valerie.
Aye.
Trustee Foley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up is a discussion of the school crossing guard program. This is a discussion item only for this evening. And perhaps I can give, since I've been working fairly closely with President Manja at the District 96 School Board, maybe I can give some background to what this is all about here. Currently, the Village of Riverside provides 6 school crossing guards at the following location. There's one at Ames School, one at Long Common Road and the railroad tracks, one at Long Common Road and Forest Avenue, one at Long Common Road and Burlington Street, and one at Long Common Road and Nuttall Road, and then, of course, there's the one at First Avenue and Forest Avenue / Ridgewood. These guards work 3 shifts per day, morning, lunchtime, and afternoon. The anticipated cost for this program for the upcoming 2014-2015 school year, the employment cost alone for the 6 crossing guards working that shift schedule is $69,260. There are also significant administrative and equipment costs that go along with the program. Those estimated costs for the 2014-2015 year are $17,800, bringing the total cost of the program for next year to $87,060. For quite a while now, since 1999, the village and the school district have had an informal cost share agreement with regard to the school crossing guards. It has been fairly ad hoc. It has been not in any kind of consistent manner. For example, up until this point, they have paid 100% of the cost of the Ames guard and the other percentages with regard to some of the other guards. The overall contribution by District 96 in 2013 was approximately 27% of the employment cost, not counting the administrative and equipment cost, which the village since 1999 has paid in full. So the village has been underwriting that part of the program since 1999. Of the $17,500 roughly dollars for the administration and equipment, it breaks down in terms of our supervising sergeant, who manages the overall program, including the annual training, facilitating the payroll with our finance department, scheduling, purchasing, issuing equipment, and also responding to the school communications and requests. Our community service officer or a patrol officer are also sometimes needed if a guard and a backup guard are not available. The first fallback is our CSO, and if he is not available, then one of our patrol officers also will go out. And then the training and equipment. There's annual training for all the guards on how to prepare and manage the crossings, and that and equipment comes to about $3,000 a year. So where things stood in 2013 was with the district contribution, they were paying approximately 22% of the overall cost of the program. Last year, the District 96 approached the village and asked us to prepare an intergovernmental agreement that would formalize our agreement and our cost share program with District 96. And I felt that was a good opportunity to also revisit the actual amounts and the actual funding levels that were being contributed by the two governmental agencies. So we prepared, in cooperation with the District 96 attorneys, an intergovernmental agreement wherein the village suggested that we share the employment cost of the program in a 50-50 cost share, that the village was willing to continue to pay for the entire amount of administration, scheduling, and equipment, but that we did think that it was proper for the school district to provide 50% of the cost of the employment cost of the program. So that's what we did. We presented them with an IGA. The school board considered it and rejected the intergovernmental agreement. And their proposal was to continue to pay the same percentage that they had been paying in the past. I feel that, and I've watched, and I mentioned earlier the website riverside.tv.us, we also have all of the school board meetings on there. And I encourage anyone who's interested in this topic to go back to the prior to District 96 meetings and watch those meetings where this is discussed, so you can see what kind of issues that some of the school board members had. My sense in listening to the discussion is that one of the things that has been an overarching misconception in this entire discussion for not just this year's but in years past is the responsibility of the various governmental agencies with regard to providing this service. It is quite clear under Illinois law that municipalities are not responsible for providing school guards, and the District 96 attorneys are in complete agreement with that finding. And it's also the case that Illinois statute specifically authorizes school boards to provide for crossing guards, to pay for crossing guards, or to enter into a cost share agreement with a municipality should that municipality decide to provide a crossing guard. So that is really the controlling law. I think that for many years there was a sense that somehow this was a village responsibility. That is more just a matter of time and tradition than anything else. But the question before us tonight, following the rejection of the IGA, is what does the village want to do in the future with regard to how we administer and how we fund the crossing guard program? So that's the question for discussion, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Can you tell us what our surrounding communities do?
Nearby there are a range of things. Oak Park has no longer pays for crossing guards at all. I believe it was in 2010, I think it was, that they stopped paying for the crossing guards, and the school districts now pay for the crossing guards. Forest Park has a 50-50 cost arrangement. That 50-50 cost arrangement includes the administrative and equipment cost and training cost for the program. It isn't only the employment cost. And in River Forest, I believe they have contracted, and Chief Weitzel's here, he can provide some more information about this if I get it wrong. They now have contracted to service out, and the school district provides the majority of funding for the administration and running of the program. There is a small village component to it in River Forest, but it's primarily held by the school board. It is true that in North Riverside and also in Brookfield, North Riverside provides 3 crossing guards, and Brookfield provides 2. The cost for those villages, in Brookfield for the 2 is $13,700 last year, and North Riverside for the 3 guards was $17,500. Those guards only work 2 shifts per day, as opposed to the 3 shifts per day that our 6 guards work. So that's kind of the cost differential, $13,700, $17,500, and then of course our cost is $87,000.
I think this comes down, having watched the meeting in which the school board discussed this topic in length, it seemed to be for them a budget issue. And I, too, think it's a budget issue for us. If you look at the party in the room that I guess has the most funds to spend, it would be District 96, since they receive the lion's share of the tax bill from each of us that pay it. I think that we should dig our heels in. I don't think that, if it, is not a law by the state of Illinois that we fund this, I believe that we should push for a 50-50 split with them. I think that's only fair. We're trying to rub pennies together to get all the things that we have to do. And at our meeting last week, we found out that we have over $7 million of expected sewer improvements to do in the future, and how are we going to pay for that? And we're not going to pay for it on the backs of a few crossing guards or saving money there, but I really think that the school board is the one, District 96 is the one that they have more money than we do. And I think that it should be their responsibility. That's just how I feel about it.
I would agree with you on several of your statements, but I disagree on one, and I don't think it is a budget issue, because it's really a minuscule amount of money over our overall budget.
I was just going into relax mode.
As it was
I like
reported.
sitting next to you.
Get the lawyer between us again. It's 0.008 of our budget, and it's 0.002 of their budget. So I don't want the idea that children's safety has a budget line item, because that's not true. That's where I'm getting at.
Okay.
I think that coming to the village board and saying you have to supply, provide crossing guards is almost like going to the District 96 board and saying you have to plow our streets, because they have no, they're not going to plow our streets, and they shouldn't, and we are the same. We do it because we want to and because we've done it all the time. And I think right now, this is where I agree with you 100%, is it's time for us to share. This is an expense that is brought upon the village solely because of the schools. I mean, we wouldn't have to have crossing guards if we didn't have schools, and we didn't have children going to the schools. And so the expense is driven by the school itself. And we have to spend the money of our taxpayers as best as we can, and we have a lot of taxpayers in this town, and I would say more than half of them don't utilize the schools. So is it really fair for us to ask more than half of the residents to subsidize this bill when they're already subsidizing the school at a tune of 70-some-odd% of their tax bill? So they're actually subsidizing 2 portions of the school. And when we did the crime data map few years ago, I mean, the amount of resources that our police and spend at the schools, District 96 and District 208, it's amazing. I mean, we're always there. I mean, you know, driving down Woodside, you know, it's safer at Terminal 1 at O'Hare than it is at Woodside at 3:30 in the afternoon. We always have to have a policeman there. There's always a policeman there in the morning. There's always one in the afternoon. You know, there's always one over at, you know, running back and forth to District 208. So to say that, you know, they have to, they don't have the money because they already do all the public safety inside the schools, it's not true. We spend a lot of money, public safety in those schools. So I think it's...
And to your point, and Chief, maybe you can answer this, is the cost of you having an officer every single day at Central, and I know you've had him at Blythe and Ames and so forth, and I don't know if that was a knee-jerk reaction to what was happening in other parts of the country, i.e. Sandy Hook, for us to start having police officers parked in front of the schools and why we're doing it, but is that cost in here? And my answer would be no, right? That's a whole separate...
You're correct. The officers or the community service officer that's at one of the schools every day, whether it's at D96 school or the RB, is not figured into that cost that the president spoke of earlier. That's regular patrol time that is spent at the school when the officers are not answering other calls.
Yeah. So that, I mean, there's an additional cost that we're providing from a security standpoint for this school district. I have 2 children in District 96. Their safety is utmost important to me, as are all the other kids in this district. But I just think it's time for us to, if we're going to have an IGA, that it be fair and right down the middle. Because we are, and I don't know, Chief, if you can break out a number of what it costs to have the community service officer at the school on a daily basis, but I'm sure it adds up on an hourly basis.
It does. If the board desires that, I can certainly prepare that for the board for the next board meeting.
If I could just follow up on that point for a second. When President Mangy and I first started talking about this, and again, I want to emphasize how cooperative and open she has been in these discussions. When we first started talking about this, we really were focused on the employment cost, the $69,000. And the reason for that, we later got estimates as to the administrative costs, but that's really what they are. They're estimates. That $17,500, $17,800, because a lot of this, and again, the Chief can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the management of this program is kind of an organic process. So one thing that I would be a little concerned about in trying to divvy up the administrative aspect of it is in order to do that really fairly to District 96, we would have an increased record-keeping burden placed on our staff. I mean, our supervising sergeant would have to make the effort to actually keep track of time spent.
Right. And I discussed
so another, I mean, one way of doing it would be, and this is what the IGA suggested originally, was that the village would retain and it would maintain the cost of the administration and equipment, but we would share the employment cost, which is a hard number. We would share that 50-50 with the school district.
And I absolutely agree with that. I think that's eminently more than fair, actually, considering, as Joe pointed out, the difference in our relative budgets. But I think it's more than fair that we should share that cost, or they should bring their share up to 50% of that cost.
Other comments?
I would agree with that.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes. I think the intergovernmental agreement as drafted is very fair. It's more than fair. The basic concept of it being that most of the costs are split 50-50. But public safety is everyone's responsibility. It's the school district's responsibility. It's our responsibility. We have in our organization some expertise in public safety. I think it's very gracious of us to volunteer that at no cost to the school districts, because we do have that expertise in-house, and we are the natural organization, agency to manage the program, decide, how it should be managed. But the employment costs, I completely agree, it should be split 50-50. The way I read the situation we're in right now is we proposed that to the school district, and we told them that we're going to pay 50% of the employment personnel costs. And their response was, we're not going to pay more than $18,700. So what I would suggest is that we take them at their word, and we proceed with the intergovernmental agreement, and we put together a program based on both parties paying $18,700. And we put that program together, and we show everyone where guards are going to be cut. Maybe we go to 2 shifts instead of 3. Maybe 1 or 2 guards have to be cut for the program. And that's the program beginning next school year, unless, and we should include in that at any time that the school district wants to up their share, we'll up our share. And up to 6 guards, maybe even more in the future if it's warranted. But, take them at their word. We said we do 50-50. They said, okay, we'll give 18.7. So I guess that's the program until they decide otherwise.
Well, one maybe a variation on that. One thing that might help the situation out is the difference in the fiscal years.
Sure.
District 96 is on July to July budget year, and of course, we're on a calendar year. One thing we could do would be to request from them to let us know, once they go through their budget cycle, they could let us know prior to our budget cycle what level of funding they intend to provide for the crossing guards, and then we could...
And we'll match it.
And then we can match it in our budget, and at that point, we could do an intergovernmental agreement that would take that funding into account. Is that...
And this would become as of September 1st.
Right.
The new school year.
The new year, starting in 2014, September 2014.
Right, or August, whenever, it's
Or
actually
August,
their
whenever-
fiscal
yeah,
year,
whenever
which
they
is,
start.
they're on a July 1 fiscal year.
Right, but the cost, the incurring
Yeah, it
of the
would be
cost
whenever
would-
school starts.
when they
right.
start.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
August.
the next school year, right. Okay, well, with that direction, that is what I will go back to the district and
That's fine.
inform them. Thank you very much.
Thanks for working on this, Ben. I know that this has been something that more than one board has addressed, so this is good.
You're welcome, and I try not to opine too much up here, but I have to say that the more research I have done on this question, the more convinced I've become that a 50-50 share is proper, and in large part because of the specific statutory overlay. The very fact that no municipality is required to provide this service, and that the statutes specifically empower school boards to do so. I think that's a significant point. And for the village to be willing to contribute half of a cost that it doesn't have to contribute at all seems to me to be eminently fair, and especially if we're going to continue to underwrite the administration and the equipment and the scheduling of the program. So I'm very comfortable with the decision that you've reached.
And
Mr.
to
Foley.
your point, doesn't the statute even allow the school district, should they want to set up their own taxing body for a crossing guard?
They can decide how to fund it. The
Right.
statute gives them authority about which fund they want to take it out
Exactly.
of.
I think what you have here is really the practice, the historical practice being assumed to be the rule. And it probably began when labor costs were lower, and it was very easy for a police department to absorb a couple part-time, maybe volunteers even originally, and oversee the program, and it really wasn't a great cost. But as it developed and standards became stricter and we expected more for public safety, the program is no longer a negligible cost.
Okay, is there any new business to discuss? Hearing none, I guess we can move to adjournment. I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Pollak, second by Mr. Foley. Please call the roll.
Seconded by about 3 people.
Trustee Stetser?
Aye.
Trustee Hamilton?
Aye.
Trustee Pollak?
Aye.
Trustee Valerie?
Aye.
Trustee Folder?
Meeting is adjourned.